So, another Levi's video, Matt? Really? I know, I've been giving the big boy of the big three quite a lot of love of late, but let's face it, over the years they've done quite a lot in denim, so there's quite a lot to talk about, and you guys seem to enjoy it, so yeah, why not? But before we get too deep into this, there's a couple of factual errors that mistakes that I made in my video about how to date a vintage Levi's jacket. First off, that 3-digit number that you're going to find stamped on the back of the buttons. I said, have a look at the number stamp on the back of the buttons. If it's a 3-digit number, then that means that it's an LVC reproduction, which is absolute, total and utter horseshit, as we're going to see in a second. Now, the second thing isn't quite as bad. In fact, it's actually a very, very good thing. I said that I'd be pretty surprised to find a legit vintage Levi's jacket here in Berlin. Well, about 3 days after I dropped that video, exactly what happened. Now, this is not something super rare like a vintage type 1 or a type 2. It's a type 3. But it is still kind of rare just to find it at random hanging in a vintage store. But what never, ever, ever happens, like ever, I paid 20 euros for this. That's like, I think that's like $23 or something. That just never happens. That's just really nothing. Even for a cheapo denim jacket, that's nothing. But, I mean, the thing is, I'd resign myself to one day paying 300-400 euros for one of these. When one came up that was perfect, like one that was in my size and in a decent condition. This is in my size and in amazing condition considering this is about 50 years old. I mean, yeah, I'm 10 years younger than this and I'm more faded than this jacket and in much worse condition. Now, the whole thing went down like this. There's this noodle bar up in Prenzlauer Berg, and Prenzlauer Berg is kind of the fancy part of Berlin. Noodles look absolutely great and I wanted to check it out. Right over the street from this noodle bar is this vintage store called Vintage Revivals, which, to be honest, is my least favorite kind of vintage store. It's one of these curated places which it removes all of that sense of mystery, that sense of discovery when you go to a really, really good vintage place. And sorry guys, if you're watching this, there's no chance you're watching this, but if you are, your staff are dicks. Like really, please hire somebody that's not just like moved to Berlin 5 minutes ago and pretending to be on Ket or on Ket, I don't know. So I'm in there having a cursory look around the jeans. I mean, I found a pair from Zara in there. I mean, really, who's doing your sorting? Who's doing your picking? I mean, Vintage Revivals, that's false advertising. I really am turning into a grumpy old bastard. I had a bit of a poke around the rest of the store and yeah, there was a couple of maybe interesting bits. I have to say, like my friend found a couple of pieces and I think this store is definitely much better for girls than guys. Like, I will give him that. But as we're waiting in the queue for the changing rooms, I spot the denim jacket section, so I think like, yeah, okay, there's only like 3-4 pieces, maximum 5. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'm going to check those out. The first one was this absolutely hideous replay thing from, I think, mid-2000s, maybe. Second one was actually quite a cool kind of acid washed oversized type 3. And the third one was this one. So I'm just like, yeah, okay. I wasn't wearing it at the time, obviously, but and it was on the hanger. Let's do this kind of legit. Let's do, not role play, but let's act this out. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, I can see that it's a type 3. I can see it's from Levi's. It's got no hand warmer pockets. It can't be, surely. Then I check the red tab, and yeah, a big E. And even then I'm thinking, yeah, okay, this can't be genuine vintage. It has to be LVC, so Levi's vintage clothing. The guys, the part of Levi's that that makes reproductions of their old stuff. And also I thought, yeah, whatever, this is going to cost me. I mean, I did find a repro, so an LVC repro in some other fancy vintage store here in Berlin, and that was priced around about 300 euros. But then I'd look at the price tag was hanging here, then I'd look at the price tag, 20 bucks. But still, I mean, it's a pretty easy decision. Even if it is LVC, I can flip it for a lot more than 20 bucks. Right up to the cash desk, shook the numpty behind the cash desk out of his K-hole and paid up. And then we go for dinner. Not the noodle place, incidentally. I mean, we got there and I've seen shorter queues outside of Berghain. They're just noodles, so we go to like a little Asian place around the corner, which is delicious. But this is when I really start to take a closer look. As I said, I'd noticed there was a paper patch with the label, the big E tab. I really have a look at the back of the buttons, triple digit. Then there's the fact that I found it in this proto-hipster nest. I'm still thinking this must be, it really must be an LVC. But then there's no sign of the made in label. I mean, back in the day, all Levi's products were made in the US, so there wasn't really a need. And there's also no sign of that massive wad of labels that you get in all the LVC stuff. Could this be genuine? Back home, and the research really starts, which actually just means sending a couple of mates, a couple of pictures, and a couple of texts. And the consensus was pretty fast and clear. Yup, this is genuine. So, what I learned with this. I was totally wrong about the 3-digit number stamp on the back of the buttons. This has got 521 on the back, which places it somewhere between 1968 and 1971, which goes along with what I could learn about the labels. Using this graphic here, which seems to be the only one that I can find around about the internet that's got this kind of information, the closest I can find to the label on this jacket is this label here. And this is very interesting and very cool. You see up at the top of this one here, the one that says 1968 to 1971, it's got like a white raggedy bit up at the top, which looks like an old label. If we look inside here, very carefully, where the label starts to come off, there's a little bit of muslin fabric that I'm guessing is the remains of whatever that label was. If any of you guys have got any idea what this was, I would love to know. Please just let me know in the comments below. Right, getting ahead of myself a little bit on the details, so, well, let's just dive into those details. The denim. Well, it's not Selvedge, and it's samfurized. See here, wool shrink 3%, samfurized. With the weights, that's actually really, that's difficult to tell. My best guess is around about the 13-14 ounce mark, which honestly is heavier than I was expecting. Every other vintage Type 3 that I've handled has been pretty worn out, and so the denim felt much lighter. But this feels pretty bulky. And the fades are absolutely beautiful. They are amazing. And the indigo is pretty lively. I guess that the previous owner, the original owner, I don't think that they washed this all that much. The best indication of that is that the paper patch is still intact. And then there's just the overall tone of the denim. It's really not that washed out. You see, what I think happened with this particular jacket is this. When these vintage stores buy their vintage clothing, they buy it in huge job lots, and then it's somebody's job, a picker, they go through picking the best possible pieces. And these job lots, they've been sitting around for decades sometimes in a dingy warehouse somewhere. Sometimes they're even like compressed and they're packed up into these huge bales. And I mean, if you've been into a vintage store, you know there's that particular stank on all of the clothes. It's this funky vintage smell that we just kind of like accept. If you think that's bad, the stuff that comes out of these bales is much worse. So all of these pieces have to be washed, and they're washed pretty heavy, pretty hot, and with pretty nasty detergents. Nobody is giving a shit about the sanctity of vintage denim when it comes to washing these vintage pieces. And so, yeah, the fades are pretty white down to the core. They're pretty contrasty because of this. I mean, the jacket's got still a little bit of that vintage funk about it, but it's really not that bad, and it is fading. Right, the paper patch, which somehow did survive that pretty hot and heavy wash. The details, the info on the paper patch didn't survive that, however, but it still has the care label, and God, like, things have really changed in the last 5 decades. So, hot wash normal cycle, color will bleed, wash and tumble alone. I mean, tumble dry, even me with my sacrilegious denim ways with washing and washing machines, not even I will tumble dry. Shrinks approximately 3%. Yeah, 3% shrinkage, definitely sanforized. And then there is I think the coolest part of that, and that is this little cloth remnant in there, which I'm so surprised that survived all this time. And what's also interesting is you can see that the label's been sewn on by hand. Not stitch by stitch, but like nowadays there's this machine that clamps down and just like runs around the label. It's like a specific machine for sewing on labels. Here we see there's been a seam that's been run down from the edge here around the label and then stopped. This is just one of these things that would save time in the manufacturing before they had the specific machines for putting on labels. There's only one thread color used through, no, there's two. There's 2 thread colors used throughout the jacket, but predominantly it's this orangey thread color. And I think there's 2 thread weights. Yeah, the stitching along here looks a bit heavier than the stitching around the pockets. And I think that the thread will be pure cotton, given the way that it's just dissolved in some places. I mean, I might be wrong in that, so don't quote me. The second thread color is a black or a very, very dark green. Nah, it's black. It's just faded out a bit. And that's used on the buttonholes and the bar tacks around about the collar. It's used very, very lightly here and there, but yeah, all the buttonholes are in this black thread. And just looking at these buttonholes, the ones that are running down the front, the one to close the jacket, they are in amazing condition. I don't think that the previous owner could have ever actually done up this jacket. There's not a rivet to be seen anywhere on this jacket. At this time, Levi's were getting super, super into their bar tacks, and the bar tacks are in that black threads, the buttonholes as well, and yeah, up here at the collar. Okay, that's a bit ass backwards. All the fades that you'd expect to see on the outside of the collar are on the inside of the collar. Okay, this is pretty cool. What's happened is that, yeah, for some reason the collar is the bit of any denim jacket that sees the most wear. It's like the crotch blowouts that you get in jeans. You get like the blowouts up at the collar. The guy's obviously not liked looking mildly homeless. He's taken it to a tailor and said, "Can you fix this?" The tailor's like, "Yeah, sure. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the collar, we're going to flip it, and then you've got a nice pristine collar on the outside, and all the homeless bits are hidden." I mean, yeah, you can just see all the fades you'd expect to see on a collar, all the wear are here, even sits that way. That's what I really love about vintage pieces, are these personal touches. You can see somebody really, really loved this jacket enough to wear it, to get some really, really beautiful fades, and enough to take care of it, enough to take it to a tailor to have it repaired. And that's something special. That's just cool. It's just a little bit more of the personal history of this jacket, and you feel a little bit more attached to the previous owner, even though you'll never know who that actually was. But what we can do, and what I've done on vintage jeans in the past, is just guess a little bit about what you could find out about the guy who owned this, the guy that wore this, from how it's worn in. You see here at the back, we have these horizontal fade lines. And that can only come when the jacket's like a little bit bunched up, sort of horizontally. And also down here at the waist adjusters, he wore this done up, which means he was much, much slimmer than I was. So it would have been sitting higher, probably sitting on his belt. Even if he was really, really slim, it would still ride up a little bit. And so that's what's caused this stacking across the back. And that's what's caused these horizontal fade lines. We even got a couple of little sort of blowouts happening here. So yeah, I would guess that the guy was a little bit shorter than me and a little bit slimmer in the chest and a lot slimmer in the belly, I'd imagine. But we can talk a little bit more about the fit in a second. Let's stick to the details right now. Let's go to the red tab, the big E red tab. Here's something that I'd never noticed before, and it shows that I've never really had my hands on too many vintage pieces. The red tab is sort of mirrored horizontally, so when you flip up the pocket, it says Levi's, that's still the right way up. I mean, that's nice attention to detail. That's a pretty nice flex, Levi's. Then there's the signature V pockets right here, and then there are the two converging seams that come down the front. That's just like straight out of the Type 3 playbook. This is what makes this a Type 3. What else? The cuffs, there's a single button closure, no rivet. There's a bar tack at the stress point instead. And there are some absolutely beautiful honeycombs coming up from the cuff. I mean, this guy really, really wore this. And speaking of wearing, when I first saw this, I thought, okay, there's no way that this is going to fit. It just looked way too slim in the body. I mean, you guys saw before, it kind of fits, right? But things were pretty different in denim back then. I mean, the fit's kind of weird. It fits me reasonably well in the arms, fits me perfectly across the shoulders, but across the body, across the chest, I can do it up, but it's not flattering. And I think I kind of understand this. I mean, at that time, denim was in flux. It was making this transition from being purely a workwear staple to being a fashion item. The Type 3 was an answer to this change. It was known for being much, much slimmer than the Type 1 and the Type 2. But what I think they did, they were just like, okay, let's just slim down the body and we'll just keep the patterns for the shoulders and the arms the same. And so maybe it was just that people were really different shapes back then, I don't know, like weird shapes. But you can kind of see in the way that this jacket's been worn. I mean, as I mentioned before, the buttonholes I don't think were ever used. And if you look at the buttonholes that were used on the back of the waist adjusters, yeah, that is a used buttonhole. These ones are not. I guess wherever this guy was based had a pretty good climate. I guess that's pretty much it for the details. But I mean, what a find. For 20 bucks? Like totally at random in this hipster vintage store here in Berlin. That's really a once in a lifetime find. At least it is for me, because I'm not really too much of a vintage raker guy. There is absolutely no way that I'm going to be flipping this, which is the initial plan. I mean, this goes with my Evisu, with my ADL, and in my top 5 denim pieces. I'm not going to wear it much. For one thing, I want to keep the paper patch as intact as I possibly can. And so I don't have to want to wash it. Like, I don't want to get it too stanky that I have to wash it. So it's going to get brought out on really special occasions when I need to flex with the other denim geeks. So that is my... Okay, that's totally squint. So, this is my vintage denim find, but I would love to hear about yours. One guy reached out over on Facebook to tell me about a Type 1 that he'd found in Ohio, I think it was. Okay, I'm going to say this, guys. I'm never on Facebook. It's one of these social media platforms that I just don't fuck with anymore. If you have written to me over there, I'm super sorry if I haven't got back to you. The best way to get in touch with me is on Instagram. Just like send me a DM there, because I maybe check Facebook once or twice a year. Or for sure, you can reach out in the comments here, just like down below. And when you are down there to reach out in the comments down below, you're going to be passing that like button, you're going to be passing that subscribe button. Guys, if you're into denim, if you're into menswear, if you're into quality menswear, then consider hitting that subscribe button, because I talk about that once or twice a week. And if this video has been something you've been into, if you've liked it, then please give us one of those thumbs up. It really does help out the channel. Now I'm going to take this off because I am going to go and take my girl out for some lunch. Living with somebody is awesome in so many ways, but one of the nicest ways is that you've always got somebody to go to lunch with. It's brilliant. I'm hoping all of you do have somebody to go to lunch with. I'm hoping both of you are happy. I hope you're healthy. Hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of the other person and each other. And guys, I'm going to see you in the next video.